if you're a lettuce warehouse or a distributor, right? So you just take in lettuce and then you send it out. And let's say there's like I don't know if you get salmonella from lettuce, but let's say you can.
Oh, you absolutely get salmonella from lettuce.
Okay, good, good.
No, that's terrible. It's not a good thing. It's terrible.
Oh, salmonella, not salmon. Okay, got it.
Welcome to the Neurotic Podcast, the Internet Computer Podcast with Jesse and Kyle. This is lucky episode number 13. How you doing, Kyle? You feeling lucky?
It's funny, Jesse. I put in the show notes that it's the unlucky 13, and we're kind of already experiencing that, aren't we?
I don't know what you're talking about. People don't want to hear a podcast about podcasting. People want to hear a podcast about the internet computer, and that's what we're here to talk about today. But we're going to start out with a little bit of follow-up. We got called out, Kyle, well, we always get called out. But we got called out by Tagger. Our good friends at Tagger called us out. Thanks for mentioning us in the draft. I feel bad now because I kind of mentioned them a little half-heartedly in the context of our draft talking about an acquisition. And I said that if Facebook were to acquire Tagger, that would count as an acquisition in the space. And well, I feel like they took our flippant remark and turned it into real meat because they spun up a Tagger conversation about what does an acquisition in the internet computer and blockchain, what does that even mean? And so I wanted to ask you about that. But before we do, Kyle, what is a tagger? Is that? Are they spray painting things? What does it mean to be tagging on the internet computer?
I actually don't think I pieced together that fact that tagger could be a reference to tagging, but it is kind of a similar thing, right? You might call it like a Reddit type website where you can post content, kind of like in Reddit, and then comments. But what makes it unique is that there is a monetization built into it where, based on whether you get likes or it actually costs you quote unquote tokens or I forget what they call the currency within the application is, but you it costs you those tokens to post, but then you actually get tokens back by people upvoting or replying to your comments. And then at the end of the day, or at the end of the week or whatever, there's actually a monetization factor where ICP gets distributed. So it's an I love it because there's kind of like a little bit of game theory in it. And when you try to, and here's really the big thing, is when you try to imagine um, life post Web 2, right? And we all complain about, well, advertising as a model, as a revenue model is the worst, and it produces this. Consumers are the product that's actually being offered. Um, this is actually a way around that, right? There's no other revenue model that's really been that's succeeded so far, and so I think Tagger is actually kind of pioneering another revenue model that might actually be fruitful for the Web 3 world.
Yeah, if I'm honest, I have actually not used Tagger that much, but I'll tell you what my experience with Tagger has been is every couple of weeks or a month or so, something about them comes up and I pop it open and check it out, maybe post one or two things, play around with it. And every single time I am so impressed with how much development work has happened on their platform. There's a level of polish being executed with them and a level of detail oriented focus on the UI, and it is fast. It is fast, fast, fast. Like one of the things that a lot of applications built on ICP, they tend to have that 2-second delay as things are finalized back to the blockchain. And Tagger does not seem to have that. When you move around on Tagger, feels extremely snappy.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a great app, and again, to your point, it was just launched, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 months ago, and has already, really the development cycle is actually really quick on it, and you're seeing new features roll out. Go to taggr.top, and then that'll redirect you to the IC domain. So yeah, so check it out.
So, do we think Tagger is about to be the latest acquisition by hungry Mark Zuckerberg? Are they about to get sucked into the Facebook Meta machine?
Well, you're the one who suggested that, so I guess that question's actually for you.
I thought I was going to get you to answer it for a second there. So I think, what does that look like? I think, and in the actual Tagger thread, which I'll link in the show notes that we're referencing, I think we're really talking about there is something more like an acquihire, right? That they will buy the intellectual property and they will buy the development team. And I think most importantly, they'll buy a toehold in the space. So, do I think that we are facing down a string of acquisitions that, Web 2.0 companies are about to jump in and, really change the way we operate on ICP? No, I don't think that's about to happen. But what I do think is true is that these big behemoth companies are not going to go away quietly, and we're going to see a lot of different attempts to use that old Microsoft, from the 90s, especially around the web, had the embrace, extend, and extinguish was their approach to the web and to growing, where they would embrace open technologies, they would extend them with proprietary technologies, and then they would use that to extinguish the competition. And I think we're going to see some of that in the not too far future in the space. And in a lot of ways, I think it might actually be a good thing in terms of it'll bring more money to the space, it'll bring more competition to the space. I think for the internet computer to grow to the size that we want it to be, we're going to see it become kind of a feisty, exciting space as the money comes in. That money is going to have an impact. It's not all going to be kind of hugs and handshakes, around the blockchain. But how do we rationalize decentralization and these big Web 2.0 companies together? I think that's sort of an open question and one that is really TBD, right? We don't know what that's gonna look like, but I do think it's gonna come.
Yeah, and I think central to that idea is really the fact that, and this is kind of my view, is the internet computer is going to host both decentralized apps and centralized apps. And what I mean by that is decentral. Like one of the promises of Web3 is you can have ownership can be spread out. Users can own the product. Developers can own the product. We have the ability to control the product. In a decentralized manner. I think that's going to be true, but there's also things you can do on the internet computer that you can't do on the traditional Web 2 stack. For example, like easy financialization, micro tipping, that kind of stuff, as well as identity management. So not just like internet identity and security, but also just like this, like what you're doing, Jesse, with tacos, right? Where you can make a taco kind of core to your identity. And by buying an NFT, you get access to a Discover portal. I think that kind of stuff where your identity can kind of go from one product to another, and you can customize your identity much easier on a Web3 platform. Like those are reasons why I think there could be centralized apps on the IC. So, for example, maybe Facebook says, "Look, we're interested in a microblogging website that has that integrates NFTs real easily, and we can't make we don't think we'll succeed at building that ourselves. So there's already this app XYZ that's exploding in popularity. It's meeting all the metrics we want. Let's just go in and buy the IP. Let's buy the code." And bring it all in house. Or if it's already, there might even be cases where there's decentralized apps and a centralized a central authority comes in and says, like a Facebook might come in and just say, look, we're going to buy up as many tokens as we can and take control of this because we think this could be a competitor to us and we want to squash it, or this could be something that, an extension of the products we're already offering. So yeah, so that's what I kind of think there could, that's why I took the acquisition bet, and why I think that there could be a major one in the next year.
I just love how competitive Kyle pops out at every opportunity where you're like, this tagger seems like a real prisoner's dilemma. I'd like to win at tagger. Can I win at tagger? Kyle wants to win at tagger.
it it's well, I'll just say there's a part of me, it's not about the actual winning, it's more how do I figure out how this game works, and can I beat it. But yeah, I don't know, I haven't devoted myself yet to seeing if I can monopolize all of Tagger's content or something like that. But when I get, maybe over the 4th of July weekend, when it's a 3-day weekend, maybe that'll be when I devote myself to that.
Kyle, you just said exactly what I was thinking because I wanted to know what's it like to play Monopoly with Kyle, and are you the banker or do you refuse to be the banker so that you can bully the banker? What's it like to play Monopoly in the Langham household? And is it everyone crying at the end of the game or just your kids?
It's everyone, including myself. I don't like to be the banker because I want more time to think. The banker's always doing monotonous tasks, like collecting money and giving change. But I need time to think and to establish negotiations, right? And to answer your question, when I play Monopoly, it's more like there are no rules in the negotiations, and so I can come up with just some crazy things like, "Hey, person A, why don't we kind of go in this together? I'll give you these properties, you give me your properties, and then we'll give each other free passes to land on each other's properties for the next like 10 go rounds or something like that. And then we can squash everyone else, and then it just becomes you and I versus each other. And then, like you said, everyone's crying in the end. Nobody wants to play, and we move about our day.
You're the first person that treats their family like a black hat hacker while playing Monopoly that I've ever met before. I'm terrified.
No, I'm kidding. I love playing games and keeping it fun with my kids.
One of the ongoing themes I feel like we keep on, running into here is that the technology doesn't determine what people can do with it, right? The technology creates opportunities for different types of approaches. And then people, through their design and engineering decisions, can execute that. And how dogmatic the company or the engineers on the project want to be about following these different principles is really open to them. And I think that's part of the, range of possibilities that building on the internet computer offers, where you can build something that's completely open source, you can build something that's somewhat closed source, you can build something that is entirely locked down smart contracts with no options for upgrading, or you could build something that'll take advantage of the SNS eventually, that'll offer a pathway for decentralized upgrading and changes to it over time. So I actually was just talking with Andra at District on a Twitter space this past week, which is available to go and stream. We'll add that to our show notes as well. And it was a really interesting conversation. And one of the things that was so fascinating was, that District started out life as a LinkedIn clone, but at its core is this really strong dogmatic approach to open source and decentralization, where they basically take a vow that they don't raise money, they have no outside investment, they have no promises to anyone. They don't work with any software that isn't open source. And they have a real guarantee about embracing decentralization in terms of freeing data, and that everything you do on that platform belongs to you, and being really open about different ways to grow it that allows the end users and groups to take advantage of the platform in this sort of open and honest way that provides a backbone of sort of thoughtfulness that you don't see in a lot of other projects. And it's really interesting to see how they make design decisions and add upgrades and build on what they're doing there with how do we do this in a way that embraces decentralization, that embraces open source, and never leaves them in a position where they are restricted in their choices because they're tied to a Web 2 solution or they're tied to a closed solution. And it really is this sort of, it's very dogmatic and it's sort of strict and it's probably limiting in terms of a lot of things that they do. But it also means that what they're doing is future proofed in so many ways. So it'd be kind of impossible to acquire District because there's no money to acquire there. The entire project is essentially self-sufficient because it's built so thoroughly on these open technologies through and through.
Yeah, actually, District had a great article back in, I think it was like October or November of last year, and what it was just about their future and kind of where they saw the project going, and they had this great line about, we're not looking to advertise. Like we fundamentally, like to our core, our values are against advertising as a revenue source. And then later in the article, they say, like the users are going to control the app and they'll decide basically how we financialize and whether to financialize and that kind of stuff. And then they say, if the users decided to advertise, that's their choice, right? Like we are so committed to the idea of user ownership that we are like even our discuss towards advertising. If that's what the users want to do, then that's what they want to do, and that's where we're going to take it. And it was just however they worded it was such like a badass line, and really captured, I guess, the ethos of District, and maybe even broader Web 3. that I just remember like highlighting that and being like, "Whoa, that is so cool."
Yep, I am bullish on District, and their new messaging feature is up and running, and it's really interesting. One of the things we talked about too was how do they balance design decisions? How do they prioritize where to assign engineering resources? And it's sort of a give and take based on feedback they get from the community and figuring out what they can build and what they can really build on, embrace that ethos through and through. So bullish on District and bullish on Tagger. I continue to think that SocialFi is such an exciting space for the internet computer, and it's such a natural fit for the internet computer's web application hosting and blockchain as a function ability to bring in finances and crypto functionality into the social space, a space that is so thoroughly broken financially right now. The experience of Instagram ads is terrible. The experience of people selling stuff on Instagram is terrible. I am very, very excited to see projects that go after, these mainstays of the Web 2.0 space.
Yeah, I know 100%. I think the market's ready for that. I think there's a lot of people who, in the last few years, have started understanding that social media, that they're the product, and almost growing a disgust towards that. So I think the market is ripe for innovation, and it just takes those innovative thinkers. I think at the same time, users don't want just a give me the same thing I already have, and but on a blockchain. I think users really want some innovation behind it and clear understanding that like they're no longer the product. Instead, this platform can exist because of it can exist long term because XYZ. Like here's the long term sustainability without advertising for this platform.
Well, speaking of going for the throat on Web 2.0 and legacy projects, you highlighted in our show notes a new project that's coming out of Supernova called Adel, which is a Trello MS Planner competitor. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, so I'm going Aodile. I don't know how would you pronounce it.
It's French. What would the French? That's a French development team. What would the French pronunciation be? I don't speak any French.
I don't either. That's why I asked you. All right. Well, either way, Aodile, Aedile.
The important thing is no matter how you pronounce it, I'm going to get yelled at on Twitter for it. So
That is the important thing. And everyone remember, if we're pronouncing it wrong, it's Jesse's fault.
always. All right. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so it's if you're familiar with Microsoft Planner or Trello, right? It's really just a workflow management tool where you can assign tasks, bucket them, create workflows, that kind of thing. Um, and so they now have a working model on the internet computer, and I came across it and thought, hey, wow, that's if nothing else to showcase how far the platform for the internet computer has gone, how you can actually run smart contracts from like actual web speed and run some of these tools that we're already if you're in the corporate world you're really familiar with these tools, and that you can run them from the blockchain. And I'll be interested to see where they go from there in terms of again not stopping at like a clone of Trello, but rather like how does the blockchain enable additional innovation within the product, um, to really like create something new that could be useful to its users.
Yeah, and jumping in there and playing around with it, I'm super impressed with their front end development on this. Really snappy UI, really great drag and drop functionality. They smartly created a demo project that you can log into that's full of different assigned items. That is what, yeah, I'm really excited about it. I'm getting live feedback. Someone that also does not know how to pronounce it is guessing Edel. Edel.
Deal.
Edel.
This is good podcasting right here.
Let's move on to some things we can pronounce correctly.
Supernova.
Bitcoin integration continues to hum along. Manu Drivers is the drumbeat on which development just keeps coming out of Definity, and I love it. This week, he posted that ICP canisters now have access to the Bitcoin testnet balances and UTXOs. It's an example. They posted some example code, and you can check for correctness of results. It's an experimental feature, it's only isolated, but it continues to every week. Here's an update, here's an update, here's an update. The drum keeps getting beaten, and it is coming.
Yeah, we're getting really close, and it's cool to see now. It's really becoming real in terms of he had tweeted that you can now query the blockchain and learn the UTXO balances, and so the next step is being able to write to the chain, and at that point they've got you know a working set of functionality for Bitcoin integration. So we're getting closer each day, and I know we focus a lot on Supernova within the community and what's going on there, but Bitcoin integration is right around the corner.
All right. Well, now I'm really stepping in it because I'm going to talk about something I don't know how to pronounce again. So I want to talk about Origin, which is launching their new coin OGY. How would you pronounce that coin?
I think OG, like how you the letters O and G. That's how I'm pronouncing it.
Like OG, like the role you get in a Discord?
Sure. Although maybe it's just OGY, the same way we say ICP.
Let's pick one, and whatever we do, I assume will be canonical and adopted by the community.
All right, I'm going OG, so I think that's cool.
Excellent. Have you swapped for any OG coins on Sonic yet?
I have not, but I did look up. It looked like it was trading at about 7.5 cents, at least when I looked it up about 12 hours ago. So I think that would be considered a successful launch from their standards. I think that's about where they were aiming to kind of launch from.
So I'm very excited about Origin. It is a big project, and we were just talking about how it feels like we haven't heard much about it. They've got a huge development team over there. They've pulled in a ton of money, some celebrity investors as well, and it's very exciting. What is an Origin, and what can you use their token to do?
Yeah, so I guess backing up, the Origin Foundation is, I mean, it kind of started, from my understanding, around the same time the internet computer was being born, and their idea is to bring the physical world into the blockchain, or rather, the blockchain to the physical world, and so their like long vision is that essentially most physical assets would somehow be represented on the blockchain as well. And so their initial verticals that they're focused on is like luxury. It's going to end up being high end because it's new technology. It's as part of that adoption curve, you're probably going to start where it makes the most value sense, and that ends up being high end. So luxury goods. I know they have a product where you can actually take a picture of a watch and verify it against the blockchain that it is the actual physical watch, let's say serial number 123, and not some counterfeit. So, if you have high end watches that are going for 50,000 or $100,000, that's a nice, great feature that they have. You can identify counterfeit purses, that kind of stuff. But really, they want to bring that platform to all aspects of physical goods. So, it wouldn't be hard to imagine, high end sneakers, that like collectible sneakers, anything collectible, honestly. But then, there's probably industrial. They actually on their website they identify as pan industry, which really, so I think they're kind of looking at this as this platform that they're creating can be used across the entire industry, all industries, to represent their physical assets in a digital sense. And so part of that is representing it as an NFT and utilizing some of the functionality of an NFT to represent it digitally. And so they're launching the OGY OG token, um, for as their utility token, which in the same way that ICP kind of is the background of how you do all your interactions on chain, on the ICP chain. The OG token is going to be what you're going to use if you want to interact. So you could imagine that these high end luxury brands will be purchasing or acquiring the OG token so that um, they can now represent their goods on the chain, on the OG chain. And then as a investment, right? If you want to become an investor in Origin, um, then you can buy the OGY token in the same fashion that you could do ICP.
Yeah, I'm excited about what they're doing. There's two things I find really interesting here. One is that I think the interaction between the digital world and the physical world is really interesting and really exciting. And I'm always looking for novel ways that these pieces are interacting because when you tie into, IRL with the blockchain, you're creating value and actual use that sort of people can literally hold in their hands and wrap their heads around, right? And so much in NFT is really a certificate of authenticity that is digitally stored. The fact that it is primarily used for trading ape JPEGs and taco JPEGs is like a quirk of the evolution of the space. And in fact, there's nothing about an NFT that says that should be or is the best use of it. And so these things that are breaking back out of it, I think, are super interesting and really exciting. I also look at, the gaming space seems really ripe for this kind of innovation with, using the blockchain for ownership and provenance and tracking. Luxury goods makes a ton of sense as a space that could really use this sort of tracking for authenticity, for auction houses, for, proof of ownership, for tracking who owned it previously can add value to a good. And it's an exciting space, and I'm really excited to see what they do with it. So there's that piece that's really growing, sort of what I think of as the true purpose of an NFT. And the other is they have a staking system. And when you read their white paper, that staking system is going to sound awfully familiar because it looks a lot like the ICP staking system. And so they're using the IC staking system for the NNS to power as a model for how they power their NFT network as well. And so both of these things, super interesting, super exciting, and it's really a demonstration of how you don't just have to build things for the IC, you can build a fully independent system on top of the IC tech stack. And it's a really great example of how the internet computer can replace traditional IT stack. It can replace traditional web hosting. It replaces traditional web servers. It competes with AWS and creates really interesting opportunities for innovation and entrepreneurship, where the fact that this is hosted on the IC is kind of a coincidence, right? That's a technical implementation detail. And the people that are really interacting directly with the system, they don't care that it's on IC. They only care that it's on the blockchain. And it's the faith and the strength and the reliability of the IC blockchain that they're building on top of that gives the project that sort of leap forward. That the IC system is just giving out these free tools to anyone that wants them. And Origin feels like it's one of the first projects that's really throwing some serious cash around in terms of building something to take advantage of the tooling that's out there. And if it's successful, I think we can see a lot more people coming into the space. We talk about the angle of attack. This is another great example, totally different than that social fi space is. What if you built an entirely independent blockchain application on top of the IC system? You just get all this stuff for free. They're just giving it away.
Yeah, I know within Origin that the IC is the only blockchain that can actually do what they needed in terms of scalability and speed. So it was intentional to go on the internet computer. And well, actually, I would probably say it's intentional to wait for the internet computer to exist before Origin even was able to develop a product, because there's nothing out there uh, that could scale to the needs that Origin has. And let me jump in, because I was sitting here thinking about like some real world use cases beyond just like luxury goods. And I actually know of a really good use case in my previous life. I did data management for biofarm companies and manufacturing. And one of the things you do, like, so when you're manufacturing a pharmaceutical, the raw materials that you put into the product actually drive about 50% of the variation in quality. And the way that the industry tracks that is, you buy a raw material and it comes with a piece of paper that's signed that gives you the attributes of that raw material, right? So their quality control testing, but it's in paper format. So then you have to put it into the computer. And the reason why they do that is because, let's say they were to just send over a digital file, but then if we were ever to be the manufacturer was ever to be audited, and that digital file didn't match the supplier's digital file. So let's say it was in a database, they gave us access to the database, we use that data, and then they later changed that data. Or basically you have to have full audit capability of the data as it goes through. And so what Origin has built is actually a solution to that, where you could take what's called a certificate of analysis. That's the piece of paper. You could mint it as an NFT. So now it's a digital copy that can't be manipulated, is recorded on the blockchain, has full auditability, and is in digital format so that the data can then be used downstream digitally. And the people downstream, whether it's the manufacturer or like the FDA or other regulatory agencies, they know for a fact that it is the original data, it hasn't been manipulated with. So that's like, I mean, I have a feeling that there's going to be millions and millions and millions of examples like that throughout all the industries in our economy, that Origin really can solve. So yeah, so I'm excited. I'd be uber bullish. Again, they've been operating a lot of under the radar. You haven't really heard a lot about them, but they're got to be the biggest team working, building a product on top of the internet computer. And so now that they've got their token launch, I think we're probably going to start hearing a lot more about it. And we'll probably all be cheerleading their success, knowing that it also is the success of the internet computer. So.
Yeah, I actually, what you're saying about pharmaceuticals reminds me of the seafood industry as well, right? So when you buy like oysters or a bag of mussels, if you buy them directly from a fisherman, there's a tag that travels with that seafood. That's that exact same thing that says, here's where it was caught, here's the license it was harvested under, and that travels with the seafood physically. And it's that same sort of thing where we could replace paper. That it's kind of mind-boggling when you think about it, that we're still pushing pieces of paper around to track this sort of thing, right? And by moving this onto the blockchain, not only does it provide a way for us, the end consumer, to embrace the being able to research it and check it itself, but then the auditing doesn't require the government agency to go in and look at the books, right? They can audit directly on the blockchain and check these things out themselves remotely and provide automated auditing. All sorts of things can be simplified and made more transparent for end consumers by using that blockchain technology. I think we've cracked it, Kyle. I think our startup is ready to go here.
Origin's beating us to it. But yeah, I mean, that supply chain management is an area that blockchain is ideally created for. And from the point, like actually like lettuce, right? If you're a lettuce warehouse or a distributor, right? So you just take in lettuce and then you send it out. And let's say there's like I don't know if you get salmonella from lettuce, but let's say you can.
Oh, you absolutely get salmonella from lettuce.
Okay, good, good.
No, that's terrible. It's not a good thing. It's terrible.
Oh, you've never had salmonella, not salmon. Okay, got it. No, the so there's this incentive, right? If you're a distributor and you're like, "Oh, no, a batch of lettuce came through my warehouse that has salmonella, and now, everything downstream, right? Everyone else I've shipped lettuce to has to be notified, and this could be a really big problem, and I may have to bring back a lot of material. I may incur a lot of legal costs, I may be bankrupt." There's an incentive to kinda say, like, hey, no, that contaminated lettuce never came through this warehouse. It must have gone through a different warehouse, right? So having that traceability is and that auditability is pretty key within the industry. And we don't really have it yet. And so maybe that's kind of what we're seeing with Origin or other um, software providers that are building on the internet computer geared for enterprise software. Maybe we're going to start to see these kind of tools come out, and businesses embrace the blockchain, um, and not just consumers embracing the blockchain.
Kyle, how much lettuce do you have in your wallet right now? Like you got some romaine, some arugula, a little frisee if you want to get fancy.
I won't lie, a good arugula, I do love. Man, you get that like at we have a place called Cava, which is out here in Maryland. It's kind of like a Chipotle, but for Mediterranean food. And you get an arugula salad with some, hummus, like red pepper hummus and some olives and stuff like that. It's worth the $11 you're paying per bowl.
That is too much for hummus. All right. Well, speaking of spreads, let's do some Ask Neurotic, Kyle.
Sure, yeah, I think it's about that time.
All right. Well, we got a real spicy one here to kick things off. I like this one. This comes from Bagginson, and he asks, How long until we see the first ClearNet Silk Road type platform built on the internet computer? My guess is it'll be relatively soon, 1 to 2 years. Surely it will be a hugely decisive moment, one that could define the direction of the IC. Where would everyone stand?
Yeah, that is a spicy take. Well, let me ask this question: Is so Silk Road was an underground black market website that got busted, and I think actually the guy who created it or ran it is still in jail, and maybe he's serving like
Mhm.
another like 20 years or 30 years or something like that. Do those things still exist? Is there like a clone of Silk Road that still exists, or is that kind of like a one and done, and now it doesn't exist anymore?
I mean, I've never bought heroin on the internet, so I don't know, but I would assume yes. I think you can just safely assume yes, right? Makes common sense.
I guess where there are humans and laws, there's always going to be a black market. Um, so I guess the question is really getting at like how long until we have a product that is deployed on the internet computer that is either objectionable to everyone, like maybe like child pornography might fit that category, or is objectionable to a percentage of people, but maybe championed as a like libertarian or decentralized um, product by some others, right? I guess that's kind of what this question's getting at.
I think so.
So I guess the answer to that is we're probably not that far off from there being something that's posted. I mean, we had the Nintendo thing back in November or the winter time. Um, Northern Hemisphere wintertime. I'm just beginning to realize how geocentric my thinking is here. So yeah, that I mean that was a big deal where the community was kind of torn between should we allow, does the internet computer exist to allow anyone to post anything and that full libertarian viewpoint, or does it exist? Are there certain standards that we should still adhere to for like copyright and trademarks and intellectual property? I imagine, yeah, that's only going to ramp up moving forward, right? Is people are going to push the envelope, and the community is going to have to decide where to go, particularly the NNS community, because they're ultimately the judges and the only ones who are capable of actually taking down canisters of objectionable material. So,
Is this the sort of thing in NNS? Let's start with something like let's start with your child porn example. Something that I think there would be overwhelming consensus that it would not should not be allowed. Is that something the NNS can handle?
yeah, so the NNS can take down any canister. That is something the NNS can do. Um, so yeah,
And then what about, yeah, I think the question would be if it's something more divisive, right? Something that maybe is illegal in some places, but not in others, and how would that be handled? I guess it would, kind of come down to, a straight NNS vote would be, almost all roads would lead there, right? I mean, there isn't really many other ways to handle it, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, so in the Nintendo case, that was probably a good example of the community had this discussion. There was clearly voices on both sides of it, and then whoever published it ended up taking it down themselves. So it never had to come to a vote. But yeah, ultimately, I mean, the NNS is like the Supreme Court, where it's like the buck stops here, and you know, this is. This is like the last straw, and so the NNS has to vote. Now, what would be interesting is if, I mean, I guess you could take your content and just spin up millions of canisters. Automate that. I guess you're paying the 1.5 trillion cycle to do that, but could the NNS keep up with an actor who is not only putting out controversial canisters, but doing it in a automated fashion? So I don't know. That could be an interesting thing to think through. That people should be thinking through how we should handle that.
I think you should just post it straight to the NNS as a proposal would actually be a better way to host this kind of content. That way, just spam, use the ASIMS model to get it out there.
Oh, geez. I guess, yeah. Well, I don't even know how you would stop that. Oh gosh.
Vote no, and get those sweet, sweet rewards would be the solution, I suppose. Do you have a spicy app idea that you would like to see on the internet computer? Do you have anything, kind of controversial that you think you'd like to see either you would be interested in building or you'd like to see someone else to build?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't. Although I wouldn't, from again that game theory perspective, I kind of am interested in like if there were apps that were not illegal in some jurisdictions but illegal in other jurisdictions, how that would be treated on the internet computer kind of seems like an interesting game theory to me. But I don't know. What about you? You got some ideas? Some spicy takes?
I have a kind of a semi-serious take that I actually am
Okay.
kind of interested in investigating here, which is I think there's a really interesting argument to be made for an OnlyFans competitor hosted on a decentralized system. I think the reasons for it are multifold. That online sex workers historically have been abused, and I think a decentralized system offers a way where they're not offering a cut to anyone else, where that's hugely appealing. I think them owning their own content and owning their own cash flow and having that be completely decentralized. There's a very very strong argument to me, a feminist argument, I believe, to be made that people should own that content in a decentralized manner outside of a system like OnlyFans exists right now. And they had that whole sort of, oh, it's going, we're banning sex work on OnlyFans, and then they wheeled that back. And that's a great example of where I think hosting on something like ICP could be beneficial. So I have friends that work in that industry, and I'm actually kind of curious to talk to them about it and see where they would lie on what they think about a system like that.
I would be shocked if somebody wasn't currently developing like an OnlyFans clone for the internet computer, and because there's two large risks that OnlyFans probably has right now. One is their financial rails. So that was why they were going to ban sex work, is because Visa, Mastercard, or Discover, or some combination of those companies came and said, "Look, we're no longer going um, to authorize transactions, on your platform because we disagree with the content that's on your platform." Um, so that's one risk, and then so that could obviously be solved on the internet computer through ICP token. The second one is the hosting, and I don't know if they host on Amazon, if they have their own servers or not. But if they are hosting on AWS or Azure or Google Cloud, then at some point that service provider could say, "Hey, we don't want to be associated with you guys, so we're booting you." And at that point, they have to basically redevelop the entire website and move it somewhere else. Obviously, on the internet computer, that's a lot more challenging. The NNS again would have to come together and say, "Look, we don't agree with this content." Um, so yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't think that's a spicy take. Honestly, I think that I would be shocked if that's not actually being developed right now as we speak.
The spicy take is when I encourage you to start making content.
Nobody wants that.
I want that. There are dozens of us out there, Kyle, that want this. Kyle's extra spicy analysis. It's already branded. Now you have to do it. OnlyFans is hosted on AWS. I just checked. All right, next question. How can the price increase with the circulation going from 100 million to 240 million in the first year? At least 40 million tokens in the next 12 months and a whopping 77K burn for the first full year. Okay, we'll probably burn more like 150K ICP tokens the next 12 months. Serious tokenomics problem or all good? Kyle, I feel like this question was designed in a lab for you. So I'm just going to kick back, put my feet up, open a beer, and let the analysis roll here.
Yeah. So, Crypto Bohemian, this is a great question, and it allows me to kind of touch on a couple topics that at least that helps people understand my mental framework for how I approach these kind of analyses. One is, first of all, to me, in a supply demand world, it's the incremental change that matters, not the absolute numbers. So as Bohemian points out, we had 140 million or so, and I haven't checked these numbers to make sure they were correct, but they seem about right. We had about 140 million tokens added to the supply over the last 12 months through all the NNS dissolves, and in the next 12 months, we're only going to have 40 million more. So net, that's actually bullish in my opinion. Even though the direction, the even though we're adding more to the circulating supply, we're not adding it at the rate that we were previously. So as long as the demand side stays the same, you have actually a slowing supply side, which should be bullish for the price. But in addition to that, I also think of it as there's kind of some parts that aren't part of this. Crypto Bohemian compares the um, what's dissolving off the NNS to the burn rate, and if you do that, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, these numbers aren't even orders of magnitude in the same ballpark. We're screwed. But what I like to do is compare the amount that's dissolving off the NNS compared to the amount that's coming onto the NNS, and as we've discussed in previous podcasts, we could actually see that be neutral over the next 12 months. It looks likely that if it's not neutral, it's just barely negative, where we have a little bit more come off the NNS than that goes back on. But it's certainly not that if 40 million comes off the NNS, that full 40 million won't be added um, to the circulating supply, because in addition to that, there's probably going to be between, let's say, 20 and 40 million that go back onto the NNS. So that's one piece of it. And then with the burn rate, I like to compare that to the node rewards that are paid out, because in my mind that's like an operational efficiency metric. You know, is the internet computer approaching like profitability more or less? And I define profitability as there's more ICP burned per month than what we pay out in node rewards. That number is, I mean, we're still a long way from that, because as Bohemian points out, there's about, maybe we burn 150K over the next 12 months. We're probably going to pay out node rewards on the scale of a few million over the next 12 months. So it's still not there. But I mean, I attribute that to, an app like Uber is, they're offering discounts left and right to acquire users. And so they're unprofitable year after year after year until they are profitable. Amazon was the same way. They spent much of the early 2000s losing money, losing money, losing money. I mean, I remember in 1998 or 99, maybe it was even 2000, there was a headline that basically, or an article that said, Amazon, if they sold every single thing in their inventory, everything they have in their warehouses, they still wouldn't be profitable. Um, and and yet here we are, Amazon 20 years later is this massive profitability machine. And a lot of that is because they weren't profitable because they were doing user acquisition. I think in the internet computer, we're in the process of doing developer acquisition. It's extremely cheap to deploy your app on the internet computer. And in the future, we could, so two things could happen. We could grow beyond where we're at now. So we're burning a lot more ICP in the future, just due to the number of apps that are deployed and the usage of those apps going up. In addition to that, we also could increase the cost of the amount burned per computational cycle. So if at some point in the future we say, hey, look, the internet computer is kind of dominant in the space. We've hit a point where we don't need to try to attract developers, either because they're coming already or we've already maxed out the amount of developers that the ecosystem is going to have. At that point, we could start doing value extraction, where we say, look, let's increase the cost of deploying your app, of running your app on the internet computer, and go that route. But again, I think that's years off. And right now, where we're at, I'm not too concerned over the comparison of how much we're minting versus how much we're burning. What I am interested in is, are we growing rapidly on that burn rate? Because that's really a usage metric that I think is pretty important to look at.
The only thing I would add there is tokenomics aren't everything in terms of, a coin's value and place in the market and what it's trading at, the way the winds are blowing, current trends. I think a lot of that has a lot more to do with it than we care to admit. And, this is we touched on this last week where utility and strength of the system in a lot of ways is a safety net that, especially in a bear market, that provides a backbone for the system. But I think in a lot of ways, what's going to make ICP coin really go to the moon in the future is not a brilliant tokenomics model. It is going to be a hit application. It's going to be demand for the token. It's going to be skyrocketing use of the platform. Those are the pieces that are really going to drive it. And the tokenomics are the underlying foundational strength of the system. And I think these kind of questions, in some ways, kind of reveal how different IC is than so many other blockchains, where the token is viewed as, following more that Bitcoin example where it's a store of value. With IC, it's so much more because it moves the value, the mining and the creation of new tokens is moved out of server hosting and mining and into participation in the DAO and the NNS. And that is such a fundamental difference that it makes it very misunderstood in the larger space. And that actually is a perfect segue to our next question, which comes from Kayer Sebastian, who asks, your take on why IC barely gets any cover compared to other blockchains. And I think the answer is it's a really strange beast that I think it combines these pieces of Web 2 and core internet infrastructure with novel approaches to blockchains that is so different and so alien in a lot of ways to the way a lot of crypto is viewed, that it is difficult to kind of comprehend and wrap your head around. And so, when I was first heavily getting involved with IC and I sort of made the rounds and asked people that really knew about the system, what do you think of it? The answer was universally the tech is amazing. The tech is really, really spectacular. And so I think what we're waiting for is applications to be built on this tech that really go somewhere, and not just tokens, not just NFTs, full blown web applications is what IC is built for. And that's what's going to make it really get recognized as a development platform, even more than a blockchain, because it moves blockchain from the everything and the whole thing to it's just a feature, right? The blockchain stuff is like, yeah, you can do that too. You want to build a world class email client that has wallet functionality, you can do that here. You want to build a Discord competitor that has wallet and NFT drops built into it, you can do that here. And so it is foreign in a lot of ways and it offers so much more. And that also is part of what creates some of its marketing challenges is there's just a lot going on here to communicate in a simple way to the broader crypto trading market.
Yeah, and I think that's absolutely right. And it also, it also is true that I don't know that Definity has focused on marketing as much as maybe some other blockchains. I think that that's kind of changing. They brought in Ava to basically kind of supercharge their growth department. You're starting to really see that that might actually change. But I do kind of echo that the crypto space is just really crowded right now. I do believe there has to be some sort of consolidation. Like in the early 1900s, there were something like 20,000 automakers, in the United States. And then there was like a decade of consolidation where, that was not efficient. It was more efficient for there to only be a few manufacturers. And I think what we're going to see in crypto is something similar, but not, it's not going to take a decade to play out. It's going to take a year or two. You're going to see some of these other coins that maybe get some press but don't have utility fall by the wayside. Um, and you're going to see like real quickly in like a year or two the market, and by the market I mean investors, users, developers. They're all going to actively say these are the important chains that the economy needs, that actually provide value downstream, and we're going to focus on our efforts on this. And in my opinion, the internet computer is going to be one of those. And I think at that point, then that hurdle of understanding the technology, the hurdle of kind of getting beyond the price and the price action, is those are going to be much more easy to do because people will have the time to focus on just the few chains that are still existing after the consolidation. So I don't know. That's my 2 cents on it.
Yeah. And I think, as we've argued many times, that's what creates the opportunity of being so early is right now the internet computer is full of potential. And obviously you and I both see it and are very bullish on it. but the question is, will the rest of the world catch up to it? And that's the bet we're making.
Exactly. Exactly.
All right, we've got one last question here. These are fun ones today. Please send more questions. We're plowing through them, but we always need more. This one comes from King Kelly One. As per Dom's tweet, what possibilities could IC open up for Elon and Twitter? Verification slash proof of identity, Twitter Spaces for select groups, airdrops for verified participants live on the internet computer, Bitcoin integration and payments through Twitter, posting on IC, etc. What do you see? What do you think a IC enabled Twitter could potentially offer in the future?
Well, I like how this question is because King Kelly gives some great examples of what a Twitter clone could do on the IC. But honestly, I don't think it's within Twitter. I don't think it's within Web two big tech, their culture for them to accomplish a move like that. I think they're like too ingrained into the advertising model to really think about that. So I could, even if Elon ended up purchasing Twitter, I don't know that they would actually move in that direction. I think Twitter's probably maximized its current operation in the sense of profitability, and I almost think that it's got to be disrupted from the outside in, and so maybe like a district or some other like Twitter like application gets put on the internet computer. But yeah, if there was that, I mean, again, that identity management, where an NFT can be not only your profile pic, but it also can gate you. I love this idea of like Twitter Spaces for select groups. Maybe it's just a select group based on an NFT ownership, or maybe it's a select group based on your activity in a different application, right? So if you've got more than 1,000 posts on Discover, maybe you can get into this, you know, uh, Twitter Twitter clone space. That'd be kind of cool. Um, but yeah, I mean, King Kelly kind of already touched on so many of it. The Bitcoin integration, so I know Twitter's kind of trying to already do tipping through Bitcoin. It's kind of not. I haven't. It's big within the Bitcoin. It was big when it launched inside the Bitcoin community, but then I haven't seen anyone talk about it since then. So it's almost just kind of like a fad or like a gimmick. I think it could actually be more incorporated into the functionality of Twitter clone. So yeah, so I'd be interested in your thoughts, Jesse. Do you have any like innovative ideas of ways that the internet computer blockchain could actually uh, enhance the Twitter product?
Well, I did, but you stole my exactly the point I was going to make. So I'll just reiterate it again and try and make it sound like it was mine in the first place here. That I think so much of the existing crypto integration into Twitter is lipstick on a pig, right? It's hey, you get an avatar in a slightly new shape that's not round. And I think Twitter, there was it's really waned now, but there was a time where Twitter was such a internet facing core identity piece of who you are, right? And so to be able to build financial operations into that and crypto transactions that I think could potentially be very powerful. I think the idea that your crypto facing identity is tied to a wallet address to receive airdrops, to conduct commerce, to do Twitter follow based NFT drops, airdrops. I think there's just incredible potential for that. I think I always bemoan that Twitter just really dropped the ball letting Instagram get purchased by Facebook. I think there's in the multiverse, there's somewhere a version of Twitter that purchased Instagram and is a much smarter, better company. But I think Instagram commerce is such a specific space that is ripe for crypto integration into it to really revolutionize and change it. And all of these things, making the currency program addressable and making the currency live directly with the user and not go through intermediaries creates these just incredible opportunities to completely rewrite the way these systems work. And so why can't Twitter be facing, a Twitter poll could have DAO functionality in it. It's so tons of missed opportunities. I would love to see super deep, interesting crypto integration. I think tons of potential where I want to see crypto go to where the people are, right? adding crypto functionality that enables Web3 style commerce, enables owning your own data, owning your money, owning your NFTs, owning all these pieces, and then having them built in core to these things. But I like you said, I think Twitter is too far gone, and instead, what we're looking at is something new that rises up with whole new pieces of functionality and replaces it wholesale. Would be super welcome at this point. I can't wait for something built on chain to really change the way that social media operates in the space. And if you are out there building that right now, please ship it and ship it soon. I can't wait for it. If there's a supernova project that's going for Twitter's jugular, so many projects have sort of come for the king and failed, the Mastodons, the app.nets. I think there continues to be a real opportunity through Twitter's complete mismanagement and lack of understanding about the power of their product that someone could really come in with something much, much better. And I welcome it.
Yeah, and I think we're using Twitter as like a fill-in for basically Web 2, right? Because I would make the same arguments about Facebook in terms of mismanagement, although not to the same degree. They certainly aren't in a debacle to the scale that Twitter's in currently. I love going back to. I love your idea of like a poll, a DAO poll, um, and in addition to that, like using polling, like so that only certain people can vote in your poll. Right now in Twitter, you put out a poll and you get anyone, including bots, can vote in it. And so maybe that'd be kind of interesting where only certain people could vote, or only certain people can see the results. So like right now, you have the show result button for those people who you don't want to vote, but who want to see the results. But maybe you can have it to where if you have certain qualifications, you can actually see the results. That'd be kind of cool. But yeah, I think the world. Just to kind of piggyback on what you're saying, I think the world is ready for. We spent like the last 15 years on this idea of network effects, where you really only need one platform for everyone to go on. You go on Facebook because your family and friends are there, and your family and friends are there because their family and friends are there. That kind of thing. It does seem like we're starting to fragment from that mindset to say no, 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 we want applications that are built for our specific purposes. So maybe I want to talk with my family and friends on Facebook, but I also want to talk to my taco friends on this discover portal, or I may want to talk with this other online community. Maybe it's your local neighborhood, and you want a different application that's built more towards that kind of communication. You could actually start seeing a lot more fragmentation moving forward at the same time that Web3 is coming around to actually be the technology solution to that fragmentization.
Listen, I hear you fishing for a job at Taco Corp, and I'm flattered, but I want to keep you focused on your Only Kyle project right now. I feel like that's the future that we need.
So, well, you let me know when my fishing has worked and I can get a job at Taco Corp.
It's coming. We're gearing up for expansion mode.
All right, should we jump into recommendations? Quick question on recommendations. Am I allowed to reuse one that you've already made that now I am addicted to?
Is it Severance?
It's not Severance, no. I don't know that that was one of your official recommendations. I think that was one of your many, many unofficial recommendations.
Who can keep track? My recommendation is unofficial recommendations, I guess. I mean, it sounds like a brilliant choice if it's something I've already recommended. So who am I to stop you from your recommendation? Please recommend something.
All right, I am going to double down on your recommendation for Taskmasters. So that's the British comedy show where comedians have to complete tasks. Yeah, that's I've watched now seasons 1 and 2. You can watch them on YouTube for free with ads, and which the ads kind of actually ruin the flow. I forgot how horrible ads are in your when you're watching video, but it's just that is it's funny, it's quirky, and it just makes you feel good. I feel like after watching it, I just kind of go to bed with a smile on my face. So great show to end the day on.
You want to hear something really wild? People in England know who those people are. Those are famous people, if you're English, that are competing on that show. Because I don't know who almost if they haven't been on Great British Bake Off, I have absolutely no idea who they are.
I feel like every single one of them, I recognize, but I can't pin it down on why I recognize them, and I wonder, like, were you like a stand-in actor, like in the background of a scene or something like that? Like every single one of them, I'm like, I kind of think I know who you are, or not even know, but I think I've seen your face before. But yeah, no, none of them would I point out like, oh, that here's their cinematography or anything like that. So.
Well, I heartily approve. Do you have a favorite task that made you exceptionally happy that you've seen on this show?
I think you know what one of the ones I really like, it was in season 2, and they had to make a meal for the Taskmaster using ingredients that had every single letter of the alphabet. That started with every so they had to have 26 ingredients, and each ingredient had to be one that started with every letter of the alphabet. And so just kind of seeing people who a most of them didn't have any like culinary skills, b like they were coming up with just some crazy ingredients, and then figuring out how to make a meal with all of those was hilarious. And then of course the taskmaster just roasting them afterwards to say like, why would you think I would enjoy this meal, kind of thing, is was hilarious.
Yeah, Greg Davies does such a fantastic job. So Greg Davies is the taskmaster and the figurehead, and then little Alex Horn is actually the mastermind behind the entire show. And so he creates all the tasks, he executes, he oversees the actual filming of them. He's putting it together, and he's a very very funny comedian. He's done a few other funny things. He has a band that does some comedy songs that are quite funny that I'd recommend as well.
Hmm. Like a Flight of the Concords kind of band.
Kinda. Yeah, I'll put a link to Alex Horn's band in the show notes, and you'll judge for yourself. But, I have no objection to this just being a Taskmaster themed podcast moving forward. That doesn't bother me at all. Completely on board.
All right, what are you recommending?
Well, Kyle, since I've been traveling, my media consumption has been just absolutely non-existent because I've been busy, touring Bali, living in a tropical paradise. So I feel like you're going to get angry at me for my recommendation, but my recommendation is to try the local spirit of wherever you are, which is almost always tastes terrible, but will endear you to the locals. And I really, it's a really fun way to get to know a culture, I find.
Yeah, I would be really disappointed if you said like Top Gun. If you're traveling around the world and you're like going to see Top Gun in the theaters, I'd be really disappointed in you, Jesse.
I heard it's kind of good. I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard it's kind of good.
Yeah, I've heard the same. I haven't seen it yet though.
Val Kilmer's not in it. I'm a lot less interested.
But yeah, so is there a spirit that you've tried that was particularly good?
Oh, is there? So the local drink here is called Arak, Arak, and it is a single distilled coconut wine. And so
Mm.
I visited an Iraq distillery, and it was really interesting. So they showed me, they pointed up and they're like, "Yeah, this tree right here is where most of our coconuts come from." And they crack them open, and then they just leave them cracked open for about 24 hours and allow the fermentation to actually happen inside the actual coconut itself. And so that'll ferment in the coconut and get that going. And that'll create, the equivalent of like a coconut beer or a coconut wine, essentially a wash in whiskey terms. And then they will distill that. They do a single distillation. And it was amazing. The still was absolutely exactly the same as the stills I saw in Mexico for distilling mezcal. Really, really simple stills. They manage the temperature entirely via adding wood to a fire underneath, very rudimentary. And they do a single distillation on it, and the resulting clear spirit is around 25% alcohol or so, give or take. And it's a spicy, it's essentially coconut moonshine, is what we're talking about. And so the locals here drink it. You either mix it with a little bit of lemon or honey or both, or I've had it recommended, over ice mixed with Sprite seems to be a popular way to drink it. but it's pretty good. I think it's better than some of the rice wines I've had in other places, but I've really enjoyed trying it, and it's such an interesting thing. And what I've discovered is it is when you're as white appearing as I am, you get real interesting reactions when you order these things. So the first place I ordered it, they served me a very nice little shot glass of it, which I dutifully drank and tasted. It was pretty good. And then the next night at dinner, I ordered a glass and they served me a to the brim full wine glass. It must have been a 12-ounce pour of 25% alcohol Iraq. And well, we drank it, is what I'm trying to say. There were no survivors.
Oh gosh. Uh, can I ask a maybe offensive question? I hope it's not offensive, but does it taste like Malibu rum?
No, no, because Malibu rum is sweet. So, most of that flavor is actually, I don't think you could really identify it as having a coconut flavor necessarily, because all of that flavor is taken out in the distillation process. So it's essentially alcohol with some water in it. It's a very, very pure form of alcohol. So it's got some fruit flavors and estery kind of notes. But it's essentially tastes like moonshine. Have you ever had moonshine, Kyle?
I have. I live only maybe an hour from the West Virginia border, so moonshine makes its way into the parts that I live.
Yeah, so you've had something pretty similar to this in that case. So but yeah, it's a great way to get to know the local culture.
Yeah, moonshine has kind of like a bad reputation, but it can be actually quite delicious and quite strong.
Oh yeah, I have some 99% alcohol rum at home. It's great for starting fires if you ever need it.
Healing cuts.
Mhm. Mhm. It's great for surgery, I guess, and hand-to-hand combat.
But pre surgery for the patient, not the doctor.
No, for the surgeon. You can't give it to a patient.
Uh,
They can't be drunk during surgery. That's very dangerous. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Neurotic Podcast. You can find Kyle at Kyle Langham on Twitter until we all move to an IC backed Twitter replacement. You can find me at ICP Jesse, and you can follow the podcast at Neurotic Pod. Please send us follow up questions and feedback and ask neurotic questions. We love to hear from you guys, and we will see you back here next week. Say goodbye, Kyle.
Goodbye, Kyle.
Oh, you finally said it.
I decided today's the day I'm going to say it. My OnlyFans website's gonna be like, look at this bar chart. Look how high it goes. That's me. That's me trying to make data sexy.
Well, you ruined it, Kyle, but I'm leaving it in the show. That stays in the edit. So moving on.
Oh gosh, I hope you cut that.
No, the only thing cut here is you, Kyle. We've been over this.